psychedelic parenting is becoming a more mainstream and documented phenomenon. Some parents, especially mothers, are turning to microdosing as a way to improve their personal well-being and parenting. And microdosing has allowed mothers to retain their responsibilities while also managing their self-care. For many, psilocybin has become a lifeline for personal and parental care management when other choices fail to alleviate the mental and emotional strains of parenthood. Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany, where high-performance health meets non-toxic living. I'm Brittany Ford, a holistic nutritionist, bringing you science-backed strategies in biohacking, longevity, and holistic wellness. Whether you're navigating fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, or simply striving for optimal well-being, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to today's episode. I am so excited that you guys are listening. I hope you like the new show format. It's kind of getting an upgrade. I brought the music back. I brought a new intro back. And yeah, everything's kind of getting an upgrade. This year in general, actually, feels like a year of like leveling up, upgrading, everything like that. But maybe as a biohacker, I always feel like that. I don't know. It's probably true. And I am excited to be bringing you a new question and answer, ask me anything, whatever you want to call it, episode today. I'm trying to do these every Friday and do interviews on Tuesdays. And I just love the questions you guys give me in my DMs on Instagram. So if you have any health or wellness questions, please head over there at BioHackingBrittany. Send me a message and maybe your question will get answered. And today's episode, I'm only doing 2 questions. I typically do 3, but there's a lot of context for both of these. So it just felt like too long. And so we're going to keep it to 2. And I also just think both of these topics are super interesting and things that are very relevant for a lot of us listening right now. Before I dive in, a few housekeeping things. I will be in Texas in a month. Oh my gosh, in a month. I will be in Austin, Texas at the Health Optimization Summit. So I hope to see some of you there. I really, really would love to meet some of you in person. And that summit and that health conference is going to be epic. There are a lot of big people going, big names going, great lineup of speakers, great exhibitors. I think there's like 3,000 people going. And I'm just really excited to kind of be there, hang out, chill, do the whole thing. And I hope to meet you there if you are attending. I'll be there with my kid and my husband, and we'll be hanging out. And yeah, let me know. And I have a discount code. If you want to buy tickets, you can get an extra 10% off. I think it's Biohacking Brittany. And yeah, feel free to use that. And I will be in Austin from, Thursday to the Monday that weekend. It's literally a month from right now. And then I'm going to Nicaragua for 2 weeks. And then I'm going to Miami. And then I'm coming back to Canada. So if you're in Nicaragua, oh my goodness, and you want to meet up, yeah, let me know because that would be fun too. I will be mostly in San Juan del Sur and spending some time there. We're actually going to look at a couple properties, which I'm going to get into later on this episode. So I'll just like put a pin in that. And then we're flying to Miami for a couple of days to break up the flight because you cannot fly directly from Nicaragua to Toronto. When you have a baby, you have to think about things differently. If it was just me, I would take the most outrageous flight to get back. But once you have a baby, things are so different. And so we are going to break up the trip, spend a couple nights in Miami. And also Miami's a lot of fun. So that'll be good anyway. All right. Also, shout out to Bioptimizers. Oh, I can't wait to see them at the health conference, the Health Optimization Summit. And I love their magnesium. I recently posted about their sleep powder and you guys loved that. I got so many DMs about that Instagram story. I didn't realize how many of you are struggling with sleep. So it's a sleep breakthrough powder. It's amazing. It doesn't have any melatonin in it. And it's fabulous. It's got herbs in it. It's got magnesium. You take it an hour before bed and it like helps you zonk out. I love it. I also love their mushroom breakthrough powder, which I use during the day. And this is a great pick me up without the caffeine, essentially. So I make mushroom milk for me and my husband every afternoon. And I love the salted caramel. And it actually works. You know how some things you take and you're like, oh, is this doing anything? With that mushroom breakthrough powder, I actually feel a difference in my energy right away. So I definitely prioritize it every afternoon. And a shout out to Wellness. This is the brand by Katie Wells, Wellness Mama. And she created a line of non-toxic house products, or I guess beauty self-care products would be more accurate. And I love their toothpaste. I use it with my son. It doesn't have any harmful chemicals or toxins or anything in it like that. Super clean. One of the only brands that I actually trust in this space, especially for toothpaste. So check that out. And I will put the link and my affiliate codes and all that in the show notes for you. So it's very easy for you to find. All right, let's dive into today's topics. These are a little controversial, but we don't shy away from that over here. So, all right. So I posted something on my Instagram stories this week talking about, what was I talking about? I was talking about coming out of the winter blues, my mental state, and microdosing with mushrooms. And I got a lot of you replying, being like, tell me more. Tell me about microdosing psilocybin during postpartum, while breastfeeding, benefits, risks, impact on mental health, everything like that. And, with the rising interest in psychedelics for mental health, there are many moms in particular exploring microdosing as a potential tool to manage postpartum mood swings, anxiety, depression, OCD, overwhelm, stress, on and on. But is it actually safe? And, what does the research say? And so that is what we are going to get into today. So I do want to preface this with, I have a full microdosing episode coming out, interview next week or the week after. And we're going to dive deep into that episode on more than what I'm going to give today. So obviously, if you're not subscribe to this podcast, because that episode was really great. And a very actually deep episode. So it was a quite insightful episode. So there's more coming on this topic. But for now, microdosing psilocybin refers to taking very small sub-perceptual doses of psilocybin mushrooms, commonly called magic mushrooms, typically about 1/10 to 1/20 of a recreational dose. The goal is not to experience hallucinations, but to subtly enhance mood, cognition, and emotional resilience. A typical microdose is about 0.1 to 0.3 grams of dried mushrooms taken every few days. Now, there's a few different protocols. That's beyond the scope of this episode right now. I actually think I have talked about them before, but we can always swing back to that. The active compound psilocybin is converted into psilocin in the body, which interacts with serotonin receptors, particularly 5-HT2A receptors, which influence mood, perception, and neuroplasticity. So actually, a 2019 study published in Frontiers in Psychology found that microdosing may improve mood, creativity, and cognitive flexibility, while another study in psychopharmacology in 2021 suggested that users report lower levels of anxiety and depression compared to non-users. However, and I'm going to say this multiple times on this episode, there are no clinical trials studying microdosing in postpartum or breastfeeding women, making this a very gray area. And maybe I should have said a disclaimer when I first started this, but this is not medical advice. This is what we know so far, and this is my experience, and you read between the lines. You take whatever you need from this episode. And yeah, that's all I want to say on that. With the fact that there are no clinical trials, it makes sense, because how could there be clinical trials? It's low-key non-ethical to, give a mom or a mom, even a breastfeeding mom, psilocybin and look at the effects on her and her baby. I just don't think there would ever be any human trials on that. Maybe one day if we were that progressive, but I just don't see that coming anytime in the future. That doesn't mean that people don't do it, right? Like many things, just because there's no actual like human clinical trials on it doesn't mean that it hasn't happened and doesn't have actually a long history, which I'm going to dive into in a second, about using psilocybin in these spaces, especially with indigenous cultures. So before we get into that history, what can you expect in general with microdosing? There's a lot of benefits that people talk about. Firstly, kind of what I mentioned, improved mood and a stronger sense of optimism, a drastic decrease in anxiety levels, increased focus and fewer difficulties in concentration, higher levels of motivation and energy, less social anxiety and better handling of relationships, more creativity in thought processes, better sleep quality, improved confidence and mental strength, and a greater sense of self-worth. While many people report these benefits, everyone's experience is unique, and there are potential downsides, including increased anxiety, emotional sensitivity, and the risk of dependence, although that is debated, the dependence part. Let's dive into motherhood with this, and then I'm going to tell you about my experience with this recently. So for new mothers, motherhood can be a tough job. I mean, honestly, motherhood's a tough job for anyone, I think, with immense responsibilities and a roller coaster of emotions. In trying to balance it all, psychedelic parenting is becoming a more mainstream and documented phenomenon. Some parents, especially mothers, are turning to microdosing as a way to improve their personal well-being and parenting. And microdosing has allowed mothers to retain their responsibilities while also managing their self-care. For many, psilocybin has become a lifeline for personal and parental care management when other choices fail to alleviate the mental and emotional strains of parenthood. Some even said it made them better parents. Mothers in particular have reported microdosing helps with managing the anxiety of their child's safety and mom guilt, preventing postpartum depression from spiraling, feeling a stronger connection with their children, experiencing deeper joy and presence during motherhood, improving relationship dynamics with their partner. And although the benefits of microdosing differ from mom to mom, many turn to it simply to function and remain present in their daily lives. And it's not necessarily about like chasing a high. I think this is a good place before I kind of get into how it works with breastfeeding and even just like, alternative strategies. So I guess I'll just touch on postpartum depression first. There is more dialogue about using microdosing psilocybin for postpartum depression. And this, postpartum depression, PPD, is incredibly common, affects up to 60% of new mothers. Symptoms include hopelessness, irritability, mood swings, a lack of interest in daily activities, sleeplessness and chronic exhaustion, difficulty bonding with the baby, and suicidal thoughts or memory problems. A 2022 study from Yale University found that a single dose of psilocybin improved neural connections within the brain and promoted new growth of lost connections due to depression. That's great. This suggests psilocybin's potential for reversing some of the brain changes caused by postpartum depression. So the way that I explain microdosing to people or psilocybin to people, and this honestly, it can go beyond psilocybin, like to other, like other psychedelics, but we're not going to talk about that today. But the way that I do describe it, the analogy, I have a couple of different analogies I use with people. The first one is that psilocybin, when you microdose with it, or even you take a macrodose, it helps you make new neural pathways in the brain. And what does that actually mean for you in real life? That means that, say you had all of these dots on a piece of paper, and your whole life you had been drawing and connecting the dots in the same pattern every single day. When you go and you microdose or you have psilocybin, you have the same dots, you have the same information in front of you, but now you actually learned a new way to connect the dots that you didn't see before. And that is what it does. It takes your information, your experience in your life, and you actually start to piece things together differently and have new insights that you just didn't have before and you couldn't see before. Another analogy that I really like is I think was this about LSD? It might have been LSD, but I heard this forever ago and it always stuck with me, is say that you're tobogganing down a hill and you are on your sled and you're going down the hill and you go down the same pathway, and you have grooves and you're going so fast down the same path over and over and over again. What happens when you take something like psilocybin is that it's like snow falling on that pathway, on that hill that you're tobogganing, on top of the snow that's already there, and hiding that path that you were taking down the hill. And now you have to create a new path, and you have a fresh blanket of snow in front of you, and you get to decide with your toboggan where you're going to go. And that path that you were once always taking down the hill with your toboggan, you can no longer see, and it's gone, right? And so then you take something new and maybe you go more to the left, or you swerve, or you make like a curvy path, or you like go down the hill a different way or the other side or whatever, right? And you suddenly have these ideas and this creativity and this insight that you actually just simply couldn't see before because you were stuck going down the same path over and over again. And so that's how you can kind of think about microdosing with psilocybin, is it's giving you the opportunity to take your experiences, your knowledge, your life, your education, everything, and just looking at it differently. Lately, we've all been reminded how important it is to stay sharp no matter how old we are. We really can't let the years slow down our mental game. Whether we're 30, 40, 80, we can choose to feel our best. If you've noticed that your brain feels a bit foggy as you age, or even as you're a new mom and you're experiencing mom brain, as they call it, it is time to clear the mental cobwebs. And I can't think of a better and more delicious way to do it than by having my daily dose of Mushroom Breakthrough from BIOHACKINGBRITTANY. Mushroom Breakthrough packs a powerful punch with 4 cognitive boosting mushrooms: lion's mane, chaga, cordyceps, and reishi, plus collagen for extra brain support. Lion's mane in particular can increase the levels of BDNF, which is a protein that helps brain cells grow. This is crucial for learning and memory, which typically decline as we age. It's kind of like fertilizer for your brain cells. On top of these incredible benefits, it's also delicious and comes in 3 different flavors that all taste amazing. Give Mushroom Breakthrough a try and feel the difference. I have a glass every single day, and you can do the same. Head to bioptimizers.com/Brittany, and you can use my discount code BIOHACKINGBRITTANY, which is in all capitals, to get your Mushroom Breakthrough for 10% off today. Your future self will thank you. And looking at it from a deeper subconscious level. What is actually happening here? Why are you choosing to do the things that you're doing? Why are you making these choices? Why are you saying these things? So it's very, 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 very insightful. Now, my experience with microdosing, before I got pregnant, I had gone through multiple times of microdosing. Okay. So it must have been 2023, like spring, summer 2023. Before I was pregnant, I think that was the longest protocol I did consecutively. So I did a few months. Let's say I took I don't even remember, maybe 2 to 3 times a week, a low dosage, like we're talking 100 to 150 milligrams. And the brand that I use is Microcybin, and I will link it in the show notes. And they actually have a specific product for women called Heal. And that's the one, I think that was the one that I was using. I dabbled with some of the other products as well. And that was very helpful for me. I had a lot of insight into my relationship with men in general, like not just talking about my husband, like men across the board, things that have happened in my life that haven't been super great with men. And I had it's not worth even going into right now, but I think it was it that summer or the summer before? I had another incident happen with a stranger man that I didn't know. And I think that actually propelled me into looking at taking psilocybin longer. And I was also in therapy. I'm still in therapy. And the talk therapy in conjunction with microdosing psilocybin was really what helped me connect the dots and understand my relationship with men and what had happened in my childhood and like when I was a teenager and the people that I was dating and the decisions that I made. And then things that also happened to me and, things online and all of these different things. And so it was really, really interesting to like connect those dots and heal that like wound that I had at that time. Other than that, I've also taken it in various places, like, on and off here and there. So I've done it quite a bit. I've also microdosed with LSD, different than psilocybin for sure. Very different energetics around LSD, and love LSD for like, concentration and getting stuff done. It's phenomenal. Psilocybin is more of like healing creativity in my mind. LSD is more like almost like an Adderall vibe to it, like caffeine. Yeah. So that was kind of the last time I had dabbled. Then I got pregnant, didn't touch anything when I was pregnant. Although we do talk about that in my episode coming out in a couple of weeks of women who microdose while pregnant. And then recently, in the last month, this is very recently, I have been feeling the call to microdose again. So I haven't had any alcohol, didn't drink when I was pregnant, haven't had anything postpartum, have an app on my phone. I think I'm like over 500 days sober right now, which feels great. And I have no plans to return to drinking alcohol. And I haven't touched like cannabis either. So no edibles, nothing like that. So, and I won't. That's another whole topic for a show. Cannabis is not something that I'd be willing to do while breastfeeding because it stays in the body for so long versus psilocybin. So then I was thinking, okay, I really miss microdosing. I just felt better on it. It was very healing for me. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to look at this. I'm going to think about it, and then I'm going to try it. So a couple weeks ago, I did my first microdosing session since, I don't even know, could be even 2 years, maybe like 18 months, something like that. A long time since I've dabbled in anything, like any type of, I don't know, recreational drug, even if it's on a microdosing level. And the first time I did it, it was my mom was here to help with Callahan. So that was great because there was less responsibility on my plate. I took 150 milligrams. It was in the Heal capsule from Microcybin. And I breastfed, and I'm going to dive into breastfeeding in a second, but I breastfed and then I took it after that. And then I didn't breastfeed again until it was cleared out of my system about 4 to 5 hours after. And I could feel that the effects were completely gone by then. And it was very insightful. It was very helpful. Like it came on a Sunday, and the Saturday before, me and my husband had gotten into a large argument, and I was really struggling with like him on his phone in front of our kid and being present as a dad, being present as a parent, and how hard that is in society now with the TV and the computer and the phone. And we both work from home. So we have these boundaries that are so blurred all of the time. And we constantly have this argument of like, don't be on your phone around Callahan. I don't go on my phone when I'm with him at all. Like maybe to play a podcast out loud or to look at the sleep timer, but I don't even answer texts because I just want to be with him. And then I feel bad when he's looking at me and I'm looking at my phone. That's just not the type of parent that I want to be. It might change, but right now he's 8 months old and I've felt this way since he's been born so far. So I just can't see it necessarily changing anytime soon. But when Ryan goes on his phone in front of Callahan, it's definitely triggering. And we argue about it, and I ask him like, get off your phone. And so the insight that came from taking psilocybin on that Sunday was very interesting because I started having these thoughts of like, I'm just thinking out loud here. What does the phone represent? And what does it actually mean to me? And why? Why am I so triggered by it? And I don't even know if I really want to get into all of that on this show right now, because I think it's just beyond the scope of this episode of like what that means to me. But that is what I'm talking about when you microdose of psilocybin and it gives you insights that you didn't see before. Because the question then becomes, is it the phone that I'm actually triggered by and irritated by, or is it what the phone represents? And what does the phone represent? And why does that bother me? And where does that come from in my own history so far and my experience in life? So that was kind of like the first time I did it. It was very interesting. Then I had the second time. So a few days later, so my original plan was I was going to do it every Wednesday and every Sunday. Sunday, I have my mom here, so I have childcare. Wednesday, Ryan takes Callahan, they go to music class, and I have him less. But my mom is not here. So Wednesday comes along and I'm like, okay, like I'm going to, microdose again, take the same cap. And by the way, I take it in the morning. It's usually on an empty stomach and with some like coffee and water, but no food. And I didn't have the best experience, in total honesty. So this time I was taking care of Callahan way more. Like I was primary until he was going to music class. And he was my responsibility for much longer while microdosing than when my mom was there. And I think that this was really, I'm still kind of digesting it, but it was different for sure. And it's like an illuminator. It shone a light on places that I have anxiety in terms of being a mother. And it actually didn't, in those hours of microdosing, it didn't necessarily make me feel better, but it again gave me insight into places that I need to heal and spend time and show love. So specifically, what we're really getting into the weeds here. Specifically, I haven't fully unpacked this. So I have like fear, I guess, as a new mom around Callahan's safety and him being okay and nothing bad happening to him in terms of him getting hurt or hurting himself or someone hurting him or any of that. And I think I've talked about this on my show before, but we have a house and the upstairs part is like, the hallways that connects all the rooms is like a landing. And there is a balcony there. And it looks right down on top of our living room. So it's a very open house, like very open concept. There's no walls in the hallways. So if that makes sense. So essentially, like there's this massive balcony. You can just like look over into the hall downstairs or down into the living room downstairs. And it's like hardwood floors. So if you fall, you would be seriously injured. And I have this fear of like me dropping Callahan over the balcony or over the railing. And it comes up so often, like when I'm walking with him in between rooms upstairs. And I have these like thoughts, and I've talked about this on the show in terms of like anxiety as a mother and intrusive thoughts and thoughts in general, what they represent, what do they mean? And so when I was microdosing with psilocybin, it like latched on to that specific fear. And it was hard. It was really hard. And I started thinking about it and I was like, oh my God, this is like so significant in my body. This is a fear that is like so significant. Like, and I was having these thoughts of like, what if I trip and fall and he falls over the railing? What if I lose control of my body somehow and he falls over and this thing happens? Or I I'm even like, my body's even heating up right now while I'm like literally saying this out loud. Because I feel like I don't say it out loud a lot. I'm like sweating. Or like, what if I lose control? What if I throw him over the balcony or over the railing? Like what, like, and I'm just having these thoughts. And it's so interesting because I've never, I guess before microdosing with psilocybin with this is like, my initial thought around having these fears was like, that has no basis. I've never hurt myself. I've never hurt Callahan. I would never do that. Why am I having these thoughts? That was like the surface level. Okay. Then I go and do psilocybin and it latches onto this thought train. And I'm thinking through this. I'm like, like this is like very intense. And it's looking at my shadow, really, right? And people talk about shadow work. And so I'm like, oh, like, what is this thought? Why do I have this? Like, what does this mean? And again, I started asking myself this question of like, what does the railing represent? Like, what does the balcony and the railing represent? Like him falling over or somehow being thrown over, God forbid. What does that represent? Like, what is actually happening here on a subconscious level? And so I've had to dive into that because where does that come from? Right? Like, where does that come from? Why does it manifest in the way that it's manifesting? Toothpaste. We all need it and use it daily. But have you ever read the ingredients of your toothpaste or noticed the FDA poison warning on there? If not, keep on listening for some surprising information that your dentist might not be sharing with you. Fluoride has long been a common ingredient in many commercial toothpastes, hailed for its ability to prevent cavities. However, recent studies have raised concerns about the potential health risks associated with fluoride exposure. These risks include thyroid dysfunction, dental fluorosis, skeletal fluorosis, and potential neurotoxicity. Given these concerns, wellness offers a safer alternative that doesn't compromise our health, yet remains effective. Why choose Wellness Toothpaste? It is founded by wellness mama Katie Wells, and Wellness is dedicated to natural health and uses hydroxyapatite instead of fluoride, a game changer in oral care. Here's why it is a better choice. It's fluoride free, eliminating all the health risks that I just talked about. The natural hydroxyapatite formula strengthens enamel and whitens your teeth. Plus, it's crafted from natural ingredients, gentle on gums, and eco-friendly. I love it. I use it all the time. I love the taste of it. And I don't think I will switch to anything else. So make the switch for yourself today to Wellness Toothpaste. Visit wellness.com and use code BIOHACKINGBRITTANY for 12% off your order. That's wellness spelled WELLNESSE.com. Safeguard your health with wellness because your smile deserves the best. Yeah, just taking a look at it. And I talk about it on this episode that's coming out in a couple of weeks more, which was really great because talking with an expert about microdosing and mushrooms is awesome. And it was just very interesting to actually peel back the layers of like, there is a deep-seated fear in me that something will happen to him and he will be taken away from me. And then the question is like, why? Why do I have that thought? Why do I have that feeling? And then we're like, I don't even know if I should probably do full episodes on this, but I think it actually has to do with the birth that I had with him. And I think it's stemmed from the downward spiral of my birth, not feeling supported by anybody, feeling out of control, feeling extremely worried that something was going to happen to him, his health, and he was going to be taken away from me because, and you should listen to my birth podcast episode, it'll explain this much better, because he was breached I found out he was breached in the last 2 weeks. I lost my midwife and I was in a new small town where I didn't really have anybody to support me. And I had to make all these decisions by myself as a first time mom. And I wanted to do a home birth and et cetera. All of this stuff happened, right? And so I think that the way that he was brought into the world, as beautiful as it was, I just think I have like trauma there that I have to heal. And I'm not even close to like really unpacking all of that, what all of that means. And I think it's like playing out in these like different places now, months later, of like something might happen to him. He might be taken away from me. And so that is what psilocybin does and this is like very specific examples. Obviously your experience was going to be completely different, but that was really hard in those few hours of microdosing to like shine a light on those shadows that are existing. And what's important in this is like, this might sound intense to you or scary, but in actuality, it doesn't matter because it's happening subconsciously and it's happening regardless. So even if you think, hey, oh, I don't want to do this because I don't want to have those types of thoughts, you're actually already having the thoughts and you're just not processing them. You're ignoring them. You're like keeping yourself busy and you're not doing the work to heal it. Right. And so when you take something like psilocybin, it like shines a light on it and you're like, oh shit, this is actually something I need to heal and look at and work through. And so that's kind of what I was thinking and where I'm at now. I haven't done it again. And I also think from that experience, and I've been working through it and whatever, I also think 150 milligrams might be too much for me. So I'm actually going to dial back to 100 milligrams. And I think I'm only going to do it when I have my mom here so that I have somebody who I can fully trust to take care of Callahan. Not that you're not able to, because obviously you still have full control of your body, your mind, and your everything. But I think set and setting are important when we talk about psychedelics, even if you're microdosing. And I think it would make an easier environment for me to really heal and explore the parts of me that need to be explored in order for me to level up in my life. That's a lot. So I hope that gives you a bit of insight. I haven't done it since, and I probably will next week again and start with a smaller dose, like I said, because I do think that there are benefits here for me to heal parts that I need to heal and for me to kind of like just level up. Now with breastfeeding, while microdosing psychedelics has been reported to help with, postpartum depression, anxiety, stress, overwhelm, the safety of microdosing while breastfeeding is actually still unknown. Microdosing has a short half-life, meaning it is quickly metabolized and eliminated from the body. However, no studies have measured psilocin levels in breast milk or tracked its effect on nursing infants. Some mothers opt to pump and store milk while microdosing, while others rely on donor breast milk as an alternative. There's obviously also the legal risks, as in many areas, psychedelics are not legalized and mothers could be criminalized and even lose custody of their child. I think that's a little drastic, but Additionally, without regulation, there's no guarantee of safe dosing or quality control. I will say with this that Indigenous cultures have been using different psychedelics for a millennia, and they continue to take them during breastfeeding, postpartum, and pregnancy. And so this is not something that like is fresh on the scene and no one has any experience with. This is a plant that has been used to heal and is a medicinal plant that has been used for a very, very long time. Very, very thousands of years. And it dates back thousands of years. There's actually evidence of it. So because of that, I think that there is an opportunity for you to explore it if you feel like that is something that you are being called to. Like I said, what I did is I breastfed, took it, waited for 4.5 hours, and then before I would breastfeed him again. Callahan is 8 months. And so I think in the beginning months, this would be very difficult because, you're typically feeding every 2 hours or so. So, and also like the newborn stage is like, it's pretty intense and you're just like on the go the whole time. I don't think that I would have had the capacity to microdose during the newborn stage, let alone like with breastfeeding, but like, let alone even like integrate what I've learned into my life. Because at that point, you're just in like survival mode for a few months before you really come out of it. So I think once your baby, starts solids, maybe it's a better time for you, or even if you're not breastfeeding and you're using formula, then obviously you're totally out of the clear. Use your discretion and make the best decision for you and your child. Something that I heard on another podcast when they were talking about this was this woman said, who microdoses while she breastfeeds and in postpartum. She said that if anyone is going to introduce my child to psilocybin or mushrooms, it's going to be me. And I thought that was such a beautiful, beautiful way to look at it, because why not introduce your kid to it versus, them, I don't know, taking a mega dose, 18 years from now at a party or something, right? So I just thought that was a really beautiful take on it as well. And who knows? Maybe there's benefit to the brain. I mean, like I said, it makes new neural pathways. It works in neuroplasticity. So, the brain is developing so much when the kid is so young. So like, maybe there are some benefits there for the baby's brain. Like we're probably just like never really going to know. There are alternative strategies, and I talk a lot about them on my show, and I don't want to really dive deep into them. Like, all types of biohacking tools, red light therapy, breath work, HRV tracking, grounding techniques. Therapy strongly suggests, like, honestly, I think everyone should be in therapy, but, especially moms, especially new parents. Let me be clear, new parents in general, my goodness. Meditation, vagus nerve stimulation, EFT tapping, yoga, functional nutrition, prioritizing sleep if you can, recovery. There's a lot. Sunlight even. There's a lot you can do here. But I hope that kind of gave you insight into microdosing during motherhood, postpartum, breastfeeding. I know there's not a lot of content out there online about it, but I will tell you that there are a lot of people doing it, even if you don't see people posting about it online. The person that I got my mushrooms from, he mentioned to me actually a while ago about, might be a Facebook group he's in, or it's probably a Telegram channel, to be honest. But there are like private groups and chat groups where there's like moms microdosing, which does not surprise me in the slightest. So you're not alone in this. If you are somebody who's interested in doing this type of thing, let me know and I can help you. Like, I'm not a guide at all, but I have experience with it. So if you have any questions, I'm here to help, especially if you're someone who's dealing with trauma healing, anxiety, depression, overwhelm, stress. It's very healing. It's very, very healing. You just have to be open to it. And yeah, it is very healing. If you're being called to it, I think there's a reason. So send me a message if you have any questions, and let's dive into our next question for today. All right. So this question is all about dopamine and dopamine fasting. Someone was asking me what I think about dopamine fasting and like asking about dopamine in general. This is actually really interesting timing. My husband's reading a book called The Dose Effect, and the dose is like an acronym. So I think it's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And this book got sent to me, and he took it and he's reading it and talks a lot about dopamine. So this has been a conversation in our household lately. And I think dopamine is very interesting. Something that I would love to dive into more. And I'll link to that book so that you can grab it if you're interested in it. So in today's episode, all about this, I'm going to dive into like the science of dopamine, quick versus slow dopamine, its impact on mental health, and how society is honestly keeping us trapped in this like dopamine cycle and obsession. So what is dopamine, first of all, and why does it matter? Dopamine is the motivation and reward neurotransmitter. It's involved in pleasure and enjoyment, focus and motivation, habit formation, and addiction. But not all dopamine is actually created equal. There's a massive difference between quick dopamine and slow dopamine. And this distinction is key to understanding why dopamine fasting can actually be so powerful. So quick dopamine is like, think instant pleasure, but it leads to dependency and lower motivation over time. So sources would be social media scrolling. Research actually shows it activates the brain very similarly to gambling. Processed junk food, high sugar intake disrupts dopamine regulation. Online shopping for instant gratification. Video games, which are highly rewarding and often hijacks the reward system. The problem is that studies show that excessive quick dopamine stimulation leads to lower baseline dopamine levels over time, meaning you actually need more stimulation to feel the same pleasure. A 2018 study in JAMA Psychiatry found that excessive smartphone use is linked to higher rates of anxiety, depression, and impulse control disorders, all signs of dopamine dysregulation. And research from Stanford University found that social media platforms trigger the same neural pathways as addictive drugs, reinforcing compulsive behaviors and reducing attention span, which I am not surprised at all. On the other hand, we have slow dopamine. This is delayed gratification, but long-lasting benefits and improved brain function. So, sources: exercise, physical movement boosts dopamine naturally. Learning a new skill, slow but deeply rewarding. Meditation and deep work increases dopamine receptor sensitivity. And time in nature. Forest bathing has been shown to increase dopamine levels naturally. There is a lot of research on slow dopamine benefits. So a study in 2016 in Nature Neuroscience found that exercise increases dopamine receptor availability, meaning the brain becomes more responsive to natural rewards. Another study in 2018 in psychoneuroendocrinology found that meditation can increase baseline dopamine levels, leading to long-term mood improvements. Not surprising. So the key takeaway from this is that dopamine fasting isn't about eliminating dopamine, okay? It's about reducing quick dopamine and retraining your brain to enjoy slow dopamine, which some people get confused, right? You think dopamine fasting, you think, oh my gosh, no dopamine whatsoever for a weekend or whatever you might do. But it's actually just looking at it from a different angle. So I do want to talk about modern society for this. Why is modern society addicted to quick dopamine? Let's be real. We live in a world designed to keep us overstimulated. First up, we have technology and the dopamine economy. The average person checks their phone 144 times a day. Did you hear me? 144 times a day. Social media is designed to give variable rewards, just like slot machines, making it addictive by nature. That's like likes, comments, DMs, scrolling, seeing a funny video, the algorithm, all that type of thing. And dopamine spikes from excessive screen time are linked to attention and motivation deficits. Then we have food and the dopamine addiction associated with food. So ultra-processed foods hijack dopamine by triggering excessive reward responses, leading to overeating. High sugar intake decreases dopamine receptor density, making natural foods feel less rewarding. And then we have the rat race, especially with North America. The constant hustle mentality keeps us in a cycle of stress and overstimulation. People in slower paced environments, think rural areas, less screen time, outdoor focused lifestyles, report higher baseline dopamine levels and lower rates of burnout. The solution? More intentional dopamine use. So I'm going to talk about my experience in a second, specifically with this. But first, how can you actually dopamine fast, backed by science? How do you actually do it? So if you want to try dopamine fasting without going extreme, here is a research-backed plan. Step 1, identify high dopamine triggers. Ask yourself these questions. Do you check your phone first thing in the morning? Do you crave sugar when you're stressed? Do you binge watch shows for hours at night? Self-awareness helps break these compulsive dopamine loops. So think about, where are your dopamine triggers and how can you work on it? Step 2, create a dopamine detox window. Start really small so that you can actually do this and it's attainable. 4 to 6 hours without quick dopamine triggers is a great place. You could avoid social media, junk food, and excessive stimulation. Replace it with walks, deep work, creative hobbies, exercise. A study related to this says that short-term detoxes improve impulsive control and motivation. Step 3, incorporate slow dopamine activities, kind of like what I just said. So like morning meditation instead of phone scrolling, exercise instead of caffeine for energy, reading a book instead of binge watching TV. Delaying gratification builds stronger dopamine circuits. That was in a study by Stanford in 2020. And finally, step 4, reintroduce technology mindfully. After a dopamine fast, choose how you use stimulation instead of letting it control you. My goodness. Set app limits. Use your phone only at designated times. Choose high-value digital content. So there was a study that showed by Harvard in 2019 that people who control their dopamine input experience higher baseline happiness. So my take on this is that, first of all, I've been really struggling making a morning routine as a mom. So it's something I'm working on. I have not figured out. Delaying looking at my phone, absolutely. Something that is really helpful and I would suggest for you if you haven't done it, is like turn all of your notifications off. When I see people and their phones out and they have push notifications from social media channels, are you kidding me? I don't know how people do that. I don't know how people have, every time someone sends you a DM on Instagram or a comment or whatever, it gets pushed and lights up your phone. That's insane. I have zero notifications from social media. I have to literally go and click Instagram to see what's going on. I don't even have the little red number above the little icon on my phone that says like 28 messages, whatever it might be. I have nothing, because I would be so overstimulated and overwhelmed if I had that turned on. So think about that. Like, where are you bombarded and how could you reduce that and that overstimulation? For me, I think I need to start to make a better morning routine, especially as we're going into spring now. It's warmer. I can get outside more. My baby's a bit older, so now I can, start my morning walks again, I think is key as well. And how do you bring nature back versus technology? This is a big question, and I'm forced to think about this because I have an online business that I can run from anywhere in the world. And while that's great, and I really value freedom, I really value nature as well. And I need to be mindful of being in the rat race and these quick dopamine hits that are not great for my mental state or for my brain. So think about where in your life you could do this. Is it video games? Is it high processed food? Is it alcohol? Is it porn? Is it, online shopping? I'm really bad with online shopping too sometimes. I kind of go through spurts. So yeah, just being really mindful of like this dopamine. And what actually, I was talking to Ryan, my husband, about this recently. And I remember when we went to Costa Rica in 2023, we went for 3 weeks and we were the most like unplugged. It was amazing. And I remember just being there and thinking like, wow, first of all, I don't miss anything from Canada. Secondly, like this just feels amazing to be outdoors and in the sun and in the heat. And I don't feel that need to be online shopping right now or scrolling or doing anything like that because I just feel better. I'm experiencing that slow, deeper dopamine versus like instant, quick dopamine. And then when we came back to Canada, I was actually low-key depressed for a while. I mean, after a 3-week vacation, like It's just so depressing coming back after vacation. And immediately I felt like, okay, let's watch a TV show. Let me online shop. Let me just get this dopamine to make myself feel better. It's very insightful. And so we actually are, this is beyond the scope of this podcast episode, but we are looking at spending our winters south in Central America. It's been a long-term plan for us, something I'm going to talk more about for this very reason, multiple reasons, but the health benefits are serious when you live in a place that is sunny and warm and also like healthier and slower paced living than in the North American rat race society that we are constantly in right now. So if you feel burnout, unmotivated, or overstimulated, dopamine fasting can really help reset your brain. Try it small. You don't need to go a whole weekend. Just try a little bit. The key isn't removing dopamine, but training your brain to enjoy natural rewards again. And just try stepping out of the rat race, even for a weekend, to experience what life feels like without constant stimulation. Another great way to do this is to go camping off grid. We love to camp. And if you go off grid where there's no reception, you legit can't be bothered. So you can't go online. It forces you. Just don't spend the weekend eating a whole bunch of high junk food, high processed food, because then it's kind of revert you back. But let's experiment together. And if you have tried dopamine fasting, please send me a DM. I'm so curious how you did it and what your experience was like. And if you have any other questions for me, let me know, because I love hearing from you. That's it for today. These questions were super interesting and I loved this episode. Thank you for tuning in. And if you have a question, send me a message on Instagram at BIOHACKINGBRITTANY, and I will be sure to answer it on an upcoming episode. Thanks for tuning into Biohacking with Brittany. If you love this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone on their own wellness journey. Stay connected with me on Instagram at BiohackingBrittany for more on high performance health, non-toxic living, and the latest in biohacking. Until next time, keep striving for your healthiest, most vibrant self.